All right, welcome back everybody. Well, this week's going to be this channel's very first foray into the Fleetwood Mac catalog. This is going to be Dreams by Fleetwood Mac, of course, off their landmark Rumors album. I love this song because the guitar parts on here are very sparse, very tasty, and interesting when you sort of break them out individually. I'm going to talk about the great electric work that Lindsey Buckingham does, making use of a volume pedal throughout that, and also touch on the acoustic guitar, which is super interesting. It's got an alternate tuning that I never knew, and I'll talk about that too. So this is the kind of thing that you like and you haven't done so yet, please jump down, click subscribe, ring the bell. The bell lets you know when I drop new content. I do that every single week. All my videos have chapters in them, so you can jump right to the part of the lesson that you want to see and bypass what you don't. And if you're looking for other ways to support the channel, I appreciate that. There's thanks, just like throwing a tip in the tip jar, or even better, you can join my Patreon page where I've got chord charts and tabs for all the lessons I do on YouTube, just like this one. Links in the description, so check it out. Okay, so this is Dreams. And so I was in the airport the other day. I was flying down to visit my folks in Dallas, and I got a text from my friend Jay, and Jay goes, "Hey Doug, has there ever been like a really good, lesson on Dreams by Fleetwood Mac using the volume pedal?" And I'm like, "I don't know, Jay, is there?" And he said, "No, there kind of isn't, so you should do one." So here it is. Thanks, Jay. And so I'm going to tackle that. So let's talk about the electric part first, because that's kind of what I think is the most interesting, what's going on here. So we're in standard tuning. No idea which guitar Lindsey Buckingham used on the record live in those days. He was using a Les Paul Custom. It's really hard for me to tell exactly what is on the record, and it doesn't matter, okay? But what does matter is you want to get a nice sort of clean. Let's just call it clean tone. I'm going to go with my middle pickup setting. And when I listen to the record, there's like, I can't tell if it's a univibe, rotary kind of thing. It doesn't really sound like it's a Leslie, but there's something on there. So I'm going to use my TC Electronic Vibe Viscous, which is that sort of univibe thing, and it runs in stereo. So I've got something coming out of here and I got something coming out of there. So in the room it sounds huge, and I'll try and pan it on the on YouTube so you can hear that too. So when I'm playing this, it sounds sort of like this. So hopefully you can get that left-right kind of thing, but that's in the ballpark, right? And all the details of my signal chain I'll have down in the description below, by the way. But the most important part, I think, to really sort of nail the parts that he's doing is to make use of a volume pedal. And many of you are probably familiar with this. If you're not familiar with the volume pedal is something you want to insert in your signal chain, and there's lots of opinion on where you want to put it in your signal chain, but it allows you with your foot to be able to rock it back and lower the volume or raise the volume. Right? So you can see what I'm doing with my foot there. Now there's basically two chords in this song. I think technically there's a third chord that sneaks in right when there's a little instrumental guitar solo that happens in the middle. But basically your two chords that you're going to be going between here are an F major 7, and a G. It's kind of like a G6. But what you'll find in here is, on the record anyway, the guitar is very sparse. And there's really not a guitar that's playing full chords throughout the whole thing. But if you're playing this live and you have a standard tuned guitar, those are the two voicings of the chords that tend to sound, I don't know, best to me, best to my ear, right? F major 7 and a G6. It's the exact same finger positioning between first and third fret and sliding it up 2 frets. That's kind of where this whole song lives, right? But let's talk about the little nuance parts that Buckingham's doing. So the song starts out with bass and drums only, and it's just, right, just F to G, right? And the first note that you hear on a guitar from Lindsey Buckingham is this A note up here, right up there. And he plays that over the second time that the bass goes to an F, so, which makes sense because that is an F chord, right? Or an F major 7 chord. That note's in it, so that's why that fits. And then he does this little bluesy. So you can watch my volume pedal cam, my V cam down there. And what I'm doing for technique a little bit, if you can even call it technique, it's my approach anyway, you sort of rock into the note. So you sort of start with your volume back, and you're rocking it forward as you begin to play your note. Right? So that's, generally speaking, as I'm playing all these little riffs, that's the approach that I'm taking, that I think I'm mostly hearing by what Lindsey Buckingham is playing, right? Then the next one is, that's just that, you're just holding that D note down and you're bending your third note. And it's actually tricky. You don't want to bend the second string. You want to keep that steady. And he lands on that E note again when it goes to the F, because it's that E note that makes that F chord an F major 7, right? It's an F with an E on top, or F with an E inside it. You're playing that over the F, right? And then it ends with down to your A note. And again, that A note is also in your F major 7 chord. There's an A, there's an A. So that's why that note works. So anyway, taking that sort of from the beginning. Either way, that first time I actually think he is hitting that second. Later on, he does the C to an A. Anyway, so that's why those notes are working with that chord set anyway. Then it's just going back and forth. It gives it another, you know. Little parts, little tasty parts that are sprinkled in there. It's very, very sparse, right? So throughout the song, there are swells. And again, here's another word for a swell. You can play a chord where you have your volume pedal rocked all the way back, and you rock the volume pedal forward after you strum the chord. Right? That's a swell. And it sounds swell. So you hear that swell several times throughout the song. I'm not going to go measure by measure and say on measure 8 you hear this note, but I'm just going to show you all the things that he's doing, right? Many times he's duplicating that swell up here at the 12th fret, because that's just the octave of your F major 7, right? I know you hear that one time, you hear that pull off from the E. Other F major 7 chords, if you're not familiar. So here's one. Here's another version of that. But here's another. And here's another. And then you start over again. So that's sort of the key chord, I think, that happens throughout the song that you're doing. But notice every time you're using a chord, a note, if you're trying to get that sound, that vibe in this song, you're oftentimes picking the note or the chord with your volume pedal rocked back, and you're bringing it forward. So that's what's going on with that. Let's talk about the pre-chorus. So the pre-chorus, again, it's still bouncing between the F and the G, but now he's just choosing to arpeggiate these two chords differently. And he's sort of not doing a lot of the volume pedal on this part, but let me just show you the notes of what he's doing, okay, right? So on the, and what I find, normally I'm fretting my F major 7 that way, but for this part, I find it easier for me anyway to finger the chords starting with my index finger on the 3rd string, okay? And so for the first chord, I'm going to do the F major 7, but I'm only playing strings 4, 3, and 1. Then I'm going to slide up to a G, and he plays a G dominant 7. He plays a G, it's a G with an F in it. Very mysterious. Then he comes up here and he plays, which if we're thinking about it in the context of an F, that's an F add, that's a piece of an F add 9, an F plus 9. Back to your G7. Back to your F major 7. Okay, so that's the pre-chorus part. And he ends it with this swell. So that last one is just taking it down from that F note. Thunder always happens when it's raining. Back to that part, right? All right, that takes us up to our guitar solo. So the guitar solo is fully played between the 1st and the 4th string, and it's only on these notes, which you may be very familiar with. That's the A minor pentatonic or the C major pentatonic, potentially, if you want to think of it that way. Everything is happening right in there. We are going to make use of our volume pedal for this, but I'm going to play the part, and then I'm going to describe what's interesting to me anyway with what's happening with the bass against what he's doing, okay? Okay, so the part that Lindsey's playing is, as my attempt anyway, it's vaguely like this, okay? Which I love that final chord at the end. Beautiful, just a... Think of it as an A minor 7, but in the context again of this song, he's going to an F and then a bass, so that's your F add 9. Okay, so here's what I think is interesting to me. So the first note of the solo is a C up here, and the bass note that's being played there is an F, which makes sense, because that's still an F major 7. And then the bass goes to a G note, that, which makes sense. That's a G. And then we're going back to an F again, and his bass does as we're doing. So we're landing on that note as the bass hits the F again, and that makes sense because that's the major third of your F major 7. An F note, and there's your major third. So on that pass, it was all F and G, F to G. Now, here's the part where you can say, well, here's where it's the third chord, and the third chord you would make it an A minor, or an A minor 7. The bass note goes up to an A after that. And he's repeating the same guitar line, right? But against the backdrop of an A, you know, that first part is what's giving it that A minor tonality to my ear anyway. And then the bass goes down to a G, just like it did. Back to your F again. So anyway, I thought that was interesting, right? Like the tonality the first time around on the solo is F to G. And then up here. Over that F note, right? So that's why you're just playing that F plus 9, F add 9. Here's the last thing I'll say about playing that part in the solo, is it's important, at least for me, to think about which fingers that I'm using on here, because I get myself in trouble when I start wanting to use my middle finger on some of these notes. And so what I have to do to stay disciplined on this is to keep my index finger owning this fret, my ring finger owning this fret, and my pinky owning this fret, and nothing's going on here on the 6th fret. So my ring finger, my middle finger is unemployed at the moment, okay? So I try and play that riff, because at the end of it, you're just dragging it across, and you want to make sure that your fingers are right in their place. That's the first one. Then I can just lay my pinky down, and my hands already at the chord. Does that make sense? All right, let us never speak of that again. Now on this pre-chorus, on the last pre-chorus, it's almost the same. The fingerings are the same. It's only how many times he goes on it. We're going to go down to F, one more time to G, and then here's where he cuts it off early, and he does this lick. Instead of going up to the F again. So he pulls it off with, I'll just play it without the volume pedal. Here's the notes that he's doing. I believe that's the rundown, but. So that last climb. So that's the sort of timing of that. And the rest of it's all the same, little swells. Until the very end. And the very end, there's a little bit of a difference to the arpeggio, just at the very, very last couple measures, or a measure. So the last thing that's different is this last sort of set of arpeggios that he does on the last like measure or two when they're singing You Will Know, okay? So the chords, normally, right, we're still sort of F to G, right? So we have our F major 7. That's the first arpeggio. And the second one is a G. It's a piece of a G. So if you were to think of a cowboy chord G, your open strings are 2, 3, and 4. But he's going to fret the second fret on the D string to make it an E note, because that's what makes that G chord a G6. Right? It's that E note, right? So that time he frets the G, he just makes that. So it's, again, the first arpeggio, G, and the second time he goes back to the F major 7, but he doesn't lay his finger down on the second string. He leaves that open, which makes it way more interesting. And then back to your G with a G6. So let me run through that again. And he ends with that, you know, F major 7 with the flat 5 on it, I think is the voicing. And he picks it like that. And then sprinkle in whatever volume pedal you want during that. All right, well that's the cool electric parts, but let me show you what happens on the acoustic in the song. I never knew this was going on, but let's take a minute to look at that. Okay, now on the acoustic, this was interesting. When I listened to the isolated guitars on this, I picked this up that he's actually playing an open tuning that I had no idea. There's only 2 places where the acoustic comes in on the song, but both times when it fades up, it's just very, very sparse, and he's just holding down a bed of sort of an F to sort of a G. In keeping with the rest of the song, right? But what's the tuning that he's using? So the tuning that he's using, many of you might be familiar with an open G tuning, right? And that's where you tune your 6th string and your 5th string down a step, and you tune your 1st string down a step, right? So if you were to strum that chord, that's like a G, it's an open G chord. So if you do that, if you're familiar with that, fine. So do that, but then take everything down another step. So you're in an open F tuning, okay? So what that sounds like is, right? And I'm gonna mute the 6th string because it doesn't sort of come into play here. Okay, so yeah. So there's your open F tuning, and here's the chord voicings that he's doing. Just that open F, and then he's placing his fingers on the 2nd fret of the 5th and the 4th string, and you leave the rest open, and that's what he plays over the G. So literally it's that's all it is. It fades out into the guitar solo, and then they bring it back later on. But that's all that is. That's on the record. Now, like I said, if you're playing this live, just play with a standard tuned guitar if you don't want to go to all this trouble, and just play your standard F major 7 chord and a G6, do that all day long and it'll sound perfect, okay? So, but I know what we do around here is try and make it sound like the record. So there you go. All right, well, that was Dreams by Fleetwood Mac, and I hope you learned something new today. So if this is something that you like and you haven't done so yet, please jump down, click subscribe, and ring the bell, and give me a thumbs up. That helps a lot. The bell lets you know when I drop new content. I'll do that every single week. Let me know in the comments what you thought about this, and if there's another song you want me to take on, let me know what that is too. But until next week, take care, everybody.